Hello, good day, everyone. Good day, right? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Haha. Right. Today, um, firstly, to introduce myself, my name is Reid, and I am a current final year student at the University of the West Indies, right? I am pursuing a lovely course in public relations communications, right? And today I want to do like a little discussion, open discussion, right? Where we'll be discussing the topic of elections, which is the 2025 general elections here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Today I brought back the lovely, right, past PR student with honors, right? Amanda Ramsingh, right? Amanda, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this nice little small mini podcast, right? Where you could give your honest thoughts on how you thought this past election was.
Okay, thank you, Zion, for that intro. I'm not sure about the honest part, but thank you.
Right? So, Amanda, tell me your general feelings on this past election. What you think, how you think this elections benefited you?
To be quite honest, Zion, usually when people ask me, who you're supporting, I always have the same answer. I don't benefit from either of them, to be quite honest. So yes, it would affect me in some ways in terms of, shopping, groceries, things like that. But at the end of the day, they all would promise you the same thing. They would go well for a good couple of months and then boom, they hit you with all the taxes, the increases. So you basically in the same hullabaloo right through.
Right. Okay. I would tend to agree with that as well too because despite my age, right, I noticed, right, for quite some years now, right, these parties they like to do specific specific targets, especially with regards to our community. So I would like to
Mhm.
give the example from the 2020 election, where the Yellow Party, I won't call no names, right? The Yellow Party decided to give $300, right, as a bribery gift, you could say,
I
along with
remember.
their yes, with along with their t-shirts. And I'm like, okay, so see, I question where they get the money from, but who am I to judge, right?
Mhm.
But I loved that response because that would actually take us into the first question of our podcast here, right? Which will be based on area in PR, right, known as SMART, right? Now you ask yourself what is SMART, right? So SMART is under the headline from establishing goals and objectives, right? So it's an acronym, right, for words such as specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timeline, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you, right, would be in 2025 election, right? In the 2025 election, right? What would you say was the most critical public relations objective, right? A political party should have established, right? Influence, right? Influential acceptance, right? Even building awareness, right? For drive action. And how well would you think they executed it based on the SMART criteria?
Okay, that's a good question, Zion. I believe in this year's elections, in Trinidad and Tobago, I'd say the most critical public relations objective for any political party should have been to influence acceptance, especially to win over undecided voters and also the first-time voters. Um, they already had the awareness, so the real challenge here was to convince the people, to trust them and relate to them. And they did use the SMART criteria, as you mentioned. Some parties did it pretty well with social media campaigns and humanizing their candidates, but overall, in my perspective, the execution could have been stronger. Messaging sometimes felt reactive instead of proactive. So to succeed, with such, they needed a little bit more consistency and authentic stories that connected emotionally. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, people want to be, they want to feel understood. They don't just want to be persuaded. So I hope that
Yeah,
answers your question.
that's actually intriguing, I should say, right? Because it touched, like I said, right, acceptance. And what would you say, right? What what form of acceptance you think the people of Trinidad and Tobago was looking for this year, right? Now we have different, options, right? We have the economic acceptance, right? We have the natural environmental acceptance, right? Where people more focus on agriculture, right, etc. What do you think people wanted this year?
I think everyone wanted, I don't want to sound greedy, but each community wanted, some would have wanted economic acceptance, some would have wanted environmental acceptance. You would have the farmers in the agricultural aspect, the economic with, the business, the fluctuations and, importations, exportations, So I think everyone wanted a chance to be heard then.
Okay. No, yeah, I'm glad you say that, right? Because you say everybody wants to be heard. And I noticed that the one party in particular, right, the yellow party, right, they which is the color of your background, though. Woo, right?
That's ironic, isn't it?
Yes. Right. But
There's
nevertheless,
red here as well. So
hey,
we not,
okay,
we diverse.
lovely.
We diverse.
Diversity is
Yeah,
key.
yeah, we
But
diverse.
um I noticed a particular party, right? The yellow party, they had the mantra of where they win, everybody wins, right? No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask one small rebuttal question, right? Now, as of June 2025, we noticed that the CPEP contractors, right? They were released from their jobs that resulted in a mass surge of unemployment, 10 plus thousand people jobless, right?
Yeah.
And now a lot of people they thought that when this new government came into power, right, they would everything would come one time. Let me be logical, that's not the case. But based on how they have started so far, right, would you say that it's a good start? Would you say it's something that is long term that could be beneficial? Right? Because I was also hearing talks of a reshaping taking place within that particular company known as CPAP.
Okay. So to reiterate what I said at the beginning, when political parties come into power, they would go well for a good couple months, but then they give you the typical Trini political party venom, I like to call it. They hit you for six. So they started off well, They would talk about, reopen Petrochan and all these things. But you come now and you close down such a sector for people, who aren't academically inclined, as where, they make their ends meet. So you come and you shut down a company like that, it's just showing that when you say when the yellow party wins, everybody wins. That's not what you're portraying. So I do not think that they are off to a good
Like
start, to be
empty
quite
promises.
empty promises. That is correct.
Hmm. Uh, I feel you on that, right?
Yeah.
I feel you on that. It's so funny, right? Because I noticed earlier on, right? You mentioned the word proactive,
Mhm.
right? And that kind of it strikes a chord with me because like in public relations, right, that would fall under a term known as like action and response strength, right? So in that particular co- um core itself, right, it's known as strategies, right? Which is either, and as I was going to say, the proactive strategy or the reactive strategy, right?
Mhm.
So obviously it's the best course of action, right? Now, interactive, you had mentioned that with I wanted to ask a question based
Mm-hmm.
on that theory, which would be in your opinion, right? Do you think the political parties communicated effectively with the public, right? So, but from a PR perspective, though, right? And how well you think they did, right? Did they balance logic, right, which could fall under legal, or would you think credibility was a great source of factor, right? Which could be ethos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emotions, pathos, example, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in their messaging, were there any key barriers that may have disrupted their communication efforts?
Okay, that's a great question, Diane. Because we're looking at it from a public relations perspective, the 2025 elections really showed both strengths and gaps in how political parties communicate with the public. Overall, I'd say they made some progress in balancing logic, credibility, and emotion, but it wasn't always consistent. For instance, many parties did a good job with logos, sharing detailed policy proposals and data to back up, their plans. You could see that especially in the live Q&A sessions and manifesto breakdowns online. But when it comes to the ethos or credibility, it depended on a lot on the candidates. Some politicians build trust by, being visible in the communities, speaking plainly and addressing tough questions directly. Others struggle with credibility, especially if past controversies or party reputation overshadowed their messaging. So there was a bit of a shaky, a little gap there for me that I was not, receiving from them. And when we get to the pathos or the emotions of it, that's where some parties they really tried to shine with that, but they shared stories about, real people, use local cultural references, and they created emotional videos and spoke about everyday struggles like the cost of living and crime and education. But saying it is one thing, but are the people really believing that you are empathetic and sympathetic with the things that you're sharing? For example, former Prime Minister Young, when he was up there talking about the food prices, and you can see he was really trying to show some emotion, but really and truly, did that really affect him personally? I don't think so, because I mean, they're collecting their nice salaries. I mean,
I
both
think he's
living
eligible for pension, prime minister's pension salary.
exactly, and you were prime minister for what, 5 minutes? Come on.
Oh my God, that's embarrassing. But hey, respect to Mr. Young. He still did a good job
Yeah,
while he was in.
he did. I mean, this is completely off topic, but I believe that former Prime Minister Rowley did him an injustice. You messed up his political career by just throwing him into the fire. Because now he has to come back and basically try to, fix his reputation, his credibility as a politician. But moving back to what you were asking, there were definitely key barriers, like political fatigue and lower voter trust. And the noise of social media was definitely misinformation. Some of the messages got lost in negativity or reactive statements rather than staying focused on a hopeful, forward-looking narrative. So, to answer the question of was there logos, ethos, pathos, while there were glimpses, of strong, balanced communication strategies, the real challenges and lessons for future to keep the message consistent, they needed to be a bit more authentic and emotionally connected with the people. And they really need to work on their defense tactics and political drum because that's what they focus on. And it's really all about engaging the people and hearing them because it's us. We are the ones putting you there to make a change. we are entrusting you with our life, basically, our education, our children, our jobs. So yeah, they need to work on that.
Well, first, I'm glad you said that because I went to they had a video circulated, right, with the now Minister of Homeland Security,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Alexander, right,
Yeah.
and Ian Allen, right, and you know, right, as some of the viewers might know as well, right, they have a love-hate relationship with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we would never forget that viral video that went with Mr. Allen, implying for Alexander. This way doing it, Alexander, this way doing it. Alexander, how you
Yeah.
could do me this? But hey, you're not mocking, right? So it was really weird to see, right, both men in that same circle with each
Yeah.
other, right? Trying to again, it was at a yellow pep rally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, we know Mr. Allen is known for voicing his claims of not being associated with a political party per se.
Yeah.
So I thought that that video played on the beliefs of the public, right? Which could fall under Plato's, right? It played on the beliefs of the public, right? It comes like, as you were saying earlier on at some point, right? A false narrative, right? Empty promises.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but yes, I just wanted to reference that per se, right? No, we're having a great conversation so far, right?
Yeah,
I can't
yeah,
lie, right?
yeah,
I wanted to segregate more towards the end of this podcast, right? With a little twist, right?
yeah,
Now, I wanted to answer this is a real critical question, right? I think many people would have this on their mind as well, right? So in the elections of this year, right? Do you think political parties, right?
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there was a effective action and response strategy, right? Now, I noticed they said that we needed to work, some parties needed to work on their responses and, their
Yeah.
communication with the public
Mm-hmm.
per se, which was seen in the ads on radios, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they were promoting and using artists of this known term known as Trinidad, right?
Yeah.
So do you think, right, that was effective, right? And if so, why, right? And how did
Mm-hmm.
you think their approach would influence their public engagement of the public, right? Because you know, and you mentioned as well earlier on, right? Voter turnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I still find it hard to believe, in my humble opinion, right, that all those votes for the specific party was way lower compared to what it was projected on television.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, to answer the latter of your question first, with regards to using the Trinidad artists to engage the voters, etc., I believe that this is just a personal opinion, but our Prime Minister, Ms. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Auntie Kams, I would like to call her, used this famous phrase, um, load up the
Load
matic,
up the matic!
load up the matic, empty the clip.
Empty the clip on them.
Right. And I feel like she won over that. She won the younger generation with that because Trinidad is running things right now in Trinidad and Tobago.
And not to add on to that, sorry to cut you, right? The
No, that's
gun
okay.
laws, right? They
Mm,
want to impose
yeah.
something to
So
influence.
I think she won on that. That one phrase just took the youth of the nation by force, by storm. But to answer your question though, in terms of the effectiveness and the proactiveness and whatnot, I believe that we definitely saw a mix. Some of the parties tried to get ahead of the issues with more proactive strategies, while others were putting out fires and responding to criticism. If I had to pick, I'd say that the party that seemed to have the most effective action and response strategy was the one that leaned into proactive storytelling, sharing the behind the scenes videos, personal stories from candidates, and the community engagement posts. Like the big before the big controversies and stuff even surface. So like the MP from Marabella West, I think it is, John Michael Ali Bokas. He is very engaging with his community. Even before he was the MP, well, elected as the MP. Although he lost his seat, you could see from his social media, he was very, very active. And that's something that both leading and opposing parties need to take a page out of his book because whether it's election or not, he is there within his community. And that's what we need, more compassionate political leaders. The proactive approach shaped public perception by making them, look a bit more authentic and relatable rather than just another party reacting to backlash or mudsliding. It kept the narrative consistent and allowed them to steer conversations instead of always defending themselves. But what's interesting is that this strategy also boosted voter engagement online. So you would see more comments, shares, and even supportive memes was coming out from the younger voters. And again, load up the matic. As you notice, I said younger voters, a lot of these were the younger generation. It
So
created this.
that would be more like, it was persuasive. It was persuasive.
Exactly, yes. So they definitely did a bit, they did their homework, with the PR perspective and whatnot. They did their homework, but they could have done it a bit more effectively. And both parties could have done a lot more work. But it created this feeling that, they were approachable and in touch rather than distant or defensive. So overall, it shows that in the local politics, just like anywhere, being proactive, transparent, and human often wins more hearts than just, reacting to the latest criticism. So I hope that answers your question.
It definitely did, right? To the max, to the T, right? In closing, I would like to say, because we're really out of time, ladies and gentlemen, right? Not to worry, right? We may have a next podcast coming in the future. Wink, wink, right? But I really want to thank you for this discussion because it not only opened the public's eyes, it also opened my eyes on some things that I also overlooked as well, right? Um, the same genre that they try to ban, right? Or they try to market to be less um recognized in the country, the music industry that is in Trinidad. It's the same genre that they use to promote
Yeah, to promote their campaigns.
their
Yeah,
campaigns, right? I think personally that's hypocritical, right?
yeah,
But I can't say anything about it. It did its job, right? It won over the right people, right?
yeah,
And now they're in power. So the most we could do right now is just to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, I guess.
yeah.
Right?
We just look and see what's about to take place.
Yeah, boy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the podcast here today. Thank you so much, right? Please help me thank Amanda Ramsingh once again, for joining us on this podcast, right? It was really nice. I am your host, Zion Reid, and until next time, take care of each other, friends.